So I started to gather some interest in yet another game dev side project of mine while on stream the other day, and I thought I'd upload my thoughts and reactions of Handmade Hero and the chat discussion we had, but just the good stuff. Shout out to Handmade Hero and Casey Muratori, aka Molly Rocket. I found out about this in April, and it has been so much fun doing this in my free time. If you are interested in making games and game engines, come say hi in my chat. I love geeking out about that stuff. Anyway, here's the stream highlights. Yep, I'm gonna be a Handmade Hero evangelist for a sec. Alright, so Handmade Hero is a series by Casey Muratori. Alright, so yeah, he starts out doing an introduction to C on Windows, which is extremely good. If you want to learn C, this is actually a pretty great place to start. It's like purpose-built C. Yeah, the problem with going to school and getting a degree in CS is it's like a lot of theoretical stuff, right? It's a lot of, you learn how to do things, not how to use it, I guess. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but like basically this course in C is directly related to Windows development for games. And so you're learning specifically those skills, which I think is actually really nice. So anyway, he's got almost 700 days worth of an hour per day building a game engine from scratch with the Windows API layer as the base layer. It's been a lot of fun. So I wanna show off real quick. Yeah, you learn the concept, but not the tools. Exactly, right? Like I learned C++ in school, but it took Casey to show me that this exists. This include windows.h. I had never heard of this before, right? I went through a whole degree and didn't know that there was a windows.h. Yeah, here's a little intro into what you learn in Handmade Hero. So you start with WinMain, and this is something that, like, again, I had no idea that this existed. But basically, like, instead of, int main, no, it's int argc char ** argv, is that right? Instead of this, you've got a WinMain. That comes from the Windows API, and that's an entry point for your app. It gives Windows information instead of generic C information. The first thing you learn after WinMain is how to create a window. And so basically you create this wind class A. So you create this window class. But yeah, then you do this, you register your window class, and then you create the window. So real quick, I'll just run that. I can't remember the state it's in. There's definitely, like, this is all like a debug window. If I want to be able to support both Windows and Linux, for example, I would have to have a branch inside the regular int main. Yeah, so I'm gonna go over that in a sec. Basically, the way that he has you set up your project, I actually really like. You would have it set up like this. WinMain is the Windows platform layer. Mac OS main is my Mac platform layer, which I've been working on a little bit. It's actually not up to date on this branch. So if I go into here, yeah, there's nothing in here, but I have it on my Mac that I've been working on. And then what you do is you actually load, like, this is crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen something like this, but what you do is you load the game code in as a DLL. And so I have this Handmade DLL. It's basically just building this C++ file. You just create a DLL for this file, and then you can load it in. And then the next thing that you do, you can check every time through your loop. So you load the game code before the game starts. And then every time through the loop, you can say, did it change? Did it change? Did it change? And then you can unload the game code and reload it. For example, I can go change the player to white. The player is that little black square, by the way. But then I build it again and boom, it instantly updates, right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I've already got hot reloading. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm like pretty excited about this. Like, it's gonna make development way easier to do it this way, to build your engine this way, and it like totally opens my mind to the possibilities. So that's pretty cool. So Handmade Hero, like I said, it's like almost 600 or 700 days worth of content. I am not gonna do that. I'm not gonna like copy his game verbatim. Like I'm obviously not going to make the same game he's making. Day 25 is the day that I've finished. That's where he finishes the Windows platform layer. Or at least kind of. Like he calls it the prototyping layer, right? So that's like as far as he wanted to go before he started working on his game. And so he starts making his game on this day. And then every once in a while, like if you scroll through these, like every once in a while you'll see like a Windows thing that he has to go back and he has to change the platform layer. There we go. New platform file API, Win32 file API implementation, finding asset files within 32. Like, so he does go back and work on the platform layer every once in a while. And so what I can do is I can just jump to those if I need to learn what he's teaching me. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm on my own, right? Because I actually want to make my game super multi-platform. I don't want to make it just for Windows. As you saw with, I've got the Mac OS main, but I've actually made a decent amount of progress on the Mac OS version. I actually already have the hot reloading done in Mac OS. They use these things called dylibs instead of DLL. I've got the rendering done, so it shows the exact same thing on Mac as it does on Windows, which is amazing. I got basic controller support. I didn't go too far into it, although technically it's better than my Windows platform layer on the controller support right now. So anyway, yeah, I've got to decide what to work on next, and I've got a few ideas. Another big part of this project, why? Why am I doing this project? The first part, so one, is I need to know. I need to know. Something in me just needs to know how things work. I love this stuff. Basically, the story is I wanted to know how on earth they made this, and the answer is custom engine. They weren't booting up Unity. They weren't booting up Godot, even Blender. They made it all themselves. And yeah, so I really look up to them. I really look up to, you know, all the greats, right? Like there's a million of them. You look at Minecraft. I'm a huge Minecraft fan. Custom engine. So yeah, this is the why. All right, the next thing. I want to be without fear when it comes to game development. I want to not be scared of any technology because that just like stops you. It slows you down. And so that's kind of where I was going with all of this. Vulkan renderer, yeah, that's going to be hard. I'm not scared. I know I can learn it. People have learned it. People have taught it. I can learn from them. There's actually a million reasons. This list just keeps getting longer the more I get into this because I keep finding awesome reasons. One of them is performance, right? I actually really hate bloat, and that's like the name of the game when it comes to game engines. Even Godot is somewhat bloated. You can strip it back, which I've done. It wasn't as rewarding as I'd hoped. I don't know, I have a lot of reasons. And Casey's got even more reasons. Casey Muratori says, I don't know, actually, you know what? We're gonna find this video because it's like one of my favorite YouTube videos right now.
You probably already answered this, but why start from scratch versus using an engine? Why reinvent the wheel? It's a good question. And the answer is twofold. One is because I think it's important for game developers who are going to be serious programmers to learn everything about how a game works. And if you start with an engine, then it basically changes what you're learning from the fundamental truth of how to implement a game to someone else's version of that. They have basically gone from what the actual game code actually does and put a big old giant layer in between you and that. So now what you're really learning is that engine. You haven't learned how to make games, you've learned how to make games in Unity.
I want to talk about this for a sec because I do agree and I disagree, right? There are a lot of transferable skills between game engines. And so he's not 100% correct there, right? Like I learned Unity first, and then when I moved over to Godot, a lot of the same concepts were there. Even if you make your own custom engine, you're going to be making a lot of the same things that an engine already does. But at the same time, like I totally agree, it's not 100% transferable. When you go from Unity to Godot, You're not like, oh yeah, I just create a game object and I do this and this and this. No, because that's a custom system.
Right? And if Unity were to disappear, for example, you would no longer know how to make a game at all.
The comments on this video are really funny. If Unity were to disappear, for example, you would no longer know how to make a game at all. This aged perfectly because people were writing these comments when Unity did their PR fail and people were like jumping ship. So I thought that was funny. I think that to some degree he's correct, right? Like if all the game engines went away instantaneously, like a lot of game developers wouldn't know how to make games. And that is interesting to think about.
The truth. And so while there's nothing wrong with making games in engines, because that may be the most efficient way for you to make the thing that you want to make, I don't think you can have a complete game development education as a programmer without learning how everything works right down to the core principles that have been true for the past several decades. That's how a CPU runs a game.
So I think that's the part that I agree with the most, right? Is I'm a scholar of game dev. Like I want to learn. I don't like, I also want to create, right? Like I am a builder. I like to create things. The thing I get the most excited about is learning new things about game development. I think that that's maybe the core thing here is like, I don't think everyone has to create a game engine. That's not what I'm saying, but I definitely have to. That's in me, right? I got to do it.
And so I think those are essential to learn, and I wanted to show them. So if people want to use engines, that's totally fine. But that is the opposite of what I'm trying to show here. I want to show how all that stuff works. And I want to give people the ability to make their own engine stuff as necessary as well. Because even if you go use an engine like Unreal or something to make a game, knowing how all of it works underneath makes you so much more powerful even in that engine. Because now it means you don't just have to look at the docs and guess how the thing kind of is doing it. You know how the thing really works. And so you can go, oh, I know there must be a way for Unreal to do X, Y, Z because I know that's how the CPU works and I know it can do it. So let me go find how to do that or write my own plugin that can do that for me. And now you're so much more powerful. You don't have to be like hamstrung by the things that they allowed you to do in that sort of layer, right? So it's empowering, it's educational, that's all good. But the second thing I wanted to point out is saying reinvent the wheel is a very misleading statement.
So his point is basically that if you do it yourself, then you tear open the black box. That's the first point. We're getting to his next point. But I think that that's an excellent way to look at it. And that's definitely how I'm looking at it.
And it always bothers me a little bit when people say things like, why reinvent the wheel? And the reason is because the wheel is an amazing invention. It is almost perfect, or even possibly perfect, for what it does. When you look at a wheel, it is the thing that perfectly turns dynamic friction into static friction for moving objects, right? It's something that is so elegant and beautiful that if you asked me why you would want to reinvent it, I would say, of course you don't want to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is amazing. It has worked for thousands of years. It has been unchanged for thousands of years. The concept is the same today as it was when they first made a wheel, probably, right? It does exactly the same stuff physically. Nothing we have developed in the past 30 years of game development is a wheel. We do not have a single
All right, we're gonna listen to that again.
Physically. Nothing we have developed in the past 30 years of game development is a wheel. We do not have a single wheel. If you think Unity is a wheel or you think Unreal is a wheel, that is it's just plain short-sighted. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. In the future, we will have so much more powerful tools for game development that they will make the engines we use today look like a joke. People will laugh at the things that we did to make games today. And the reason that I point that out is not to diss on those things because they are the best engines we have today. So yes, if you need to use an engine, you want to use some of these things, right? But I want to point out the fact that if we want to get to a real wheel, that when you really do say to me, why would you reinvent the wheel? I would say, you shouldn't. Use the wheel. If we want to get to that wheel, we need people making new things that attempt to be a wheel. And you can't do that if all you know how to do is program stuff in Unreal or Unity because that's all you get. That's the square wheel, right? That's kind of clunking around. And if all you're ever going to do is build cars on top of that, they're going to be lousy, right? Unless you're driving on a road that looks like this. So basically what I want to inspire to as part of this series, if I can, is I want people to look at this and go, hey, wait a minute, low-level game programming is not that hard. I saw him do it, I saw how he did it, and I'm starting to understand this. I could go do this. And if they get into it and get excited about it, then they may be the people who make those next engines that allow a whole new wave of game development to happen. Just like Unity allowed so many more people to make games who didn't have that knowledge, who's going to be making those things of the future, right? And so that's why I think low-level programming is so important, is because we need lots of people with those talents and those skills to get us to the point where it really is silly to be working on it anymore. But we are so far from there, trust me.
So anyway, I mean, this has affected me deeply. Yeah, everything you said resonates with me. I love the point of nothing we have today is a wheel. I think that's amazing and probably true. So the obvious hole in his argument is that the wheel was perfect when it was invented. That's obviously not true. In fact, I think NASA reinvented the wheel to some degree. Well, they reinvented the tire, I guess. If we're talking about like a normal machine, then I guess the wheel is the same. It's just a circle. But like an actual wheel has been iterated on. People are changing it all the time. But I guess the core functionality is still there. Saying reinvent the wheel does seem a little bit silly when you put that in perspective. I love his point that, because we do this, right? We look in the past and we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they lived without the internet or whatever, right? Like you look at even 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and you're like, wow, life was so different. Their technology was so primitive. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, but like, well, what's it going to be like in another 50 years? People are going to look at us and say we're primitive. And so, yeah, I think to get there, you got to innovate. You got to learn all the tools of the trade, and you got to break away from the norm. And that's what I'm trying to do a little bit. Like, I don't think I want my game engine to be like a commercial game engine. I would like to maybe work on one of those sometime. Like maybe the skills that I learn from making my own game with my custom engine could transfer to someone else who I'm impressed by, and I can help them make a better game engine. I don't know if you know about Billy Basso. He's also my hero. I'm a huge fan. Animal Well was such a fun game, and he was a Handmade Hero student. He followed the Handmade Hero course for 30 days is what he said, and then he broke off on his own and built it all from scratch. And he said that it was just no nonsense code. Everything in the engine was exactly for the game. He said he's working on another game and that he just started the game engine over. He says there's no reason to like bring over extra code if it's not needed. So he will add code when it's needed. If he needs to copy it over, so be it. But yeah, everything will be like the minimum required to make the game, which I like. I think that's an awesome way to be. I mean, it's a lot of fun for me to rant about this kind of stuff. I'm clearly quite passionate, but also, again, I don't have a lot to show for it. I think people are scared of spending their precious time. I get that too, but time is a resource just like money, and it's meant to be spent. True, I like that. I've never heard it said that way. Time is a resource just like money, and it's meant to be spent. I like that a lot. I definitely have always thought of money and time as separate, but it's like mana and health in a video game. But yeah, they're like unrelated resources, right? People say time is money, but what they mean is time is another resource that you can spend. Ah, I like that. I like that. Please play my game.